Hello, hello. Good evening. Buenas noches. I'm using a different mic tonight, so if y'all can let me know whether or not you can hear me, then we can get started. Thank you guys for joining me live. Um, and I'm back 2 weeks in a row. I know it's a big surprise, but now that I'm home and I'm not traveling, we should be here every Tuesday night. So, do I sound okay? Can y'all hear me? I hope so. Hope so. Okay. All right. Uh, um, whether you're tired of the US rat race, or you've been dreaming about living abroad for most of your life, actually moving to another country can be really exciting, but it can also be scary at the same time. Where do you start? How do you pick a destination? And what happens if you don't like it? That's what we're talking about tonight. But before we do that, I need to introduce myself. If you are new to the channel, welcome. Welcome to the Big Girl Nation. I'm Adelia Aborashade. I left the US 8 years ago, actually. July 23rd will be 8 years. And I've since lived in 4 different countries, which includes my adopted country, my adopted home of Mexico. I'm coming to you live from Mexico City tonight. I am a financial educator. I am the co-host of Reclaim the Retreat. On this channel, I help people like you live their best life by demystifying travel, money, and everything in between. If I sound like your kind of person, if these are things that you are interested in knowing more about, yay, you are in the right place. Be sure to either hit the subscribe button, or maybe you want to do both, hit the subscribe button and hit the like button. This way YouTube knows that you want more of this content and they will bring it to your feed. Hello to everybody in the chat. Thank y'all for joining me. All right, so in the intro, I talked about 3 questions people have. Where do I start? How do I pick a country? And what if I hate it? Where do I start? That is an easy one. I forgot to turn this on. That's an easy one because I've already done the hard work for you. If you go to this bit.ly link, which is also linked in the description of this video, you can get my Move Abroad checklist, which I intend for it to cover lots of the areas that you've got to think about when you are moving to another country. That checklist is completely free, so grab that. Also, on this channel, I have a playlist called How to Move Abroad, and I think, good Lord, there might be 50 videos in there where I've covered all kinds of topics when it comes to moving abroad, finding a job, getting a visa, what to do about your money and your finances, all of that. So where to start? Easy peasy. In particular, I've linked a couple of videos in the description of this that I think fit with our conversation tonight. Okay, so how do you pick a destination? In the description of this video, I have linked to 3 videos I've done over the years to help you with your country shopping adventures. That's what I call it, because before I left the United States, I'm somebody who had always dreamed about living abroad, but life got in the way. I got married when I was 19. And so was living my life and thought maybe that's something I'll get to do when I retire. Fast forward 20 years, I got a divorce. I, you know, was like, I'm out. Let me go out and see the world. And so once I made that decision that I was going to leave the United States, I started country shopping. I did not want to end up in a place simply by happenstance. I wanted to really evaluate what I was looking for in a country and be able to easily compare countries that, and what they had to offer to see if they would be a good fit. In particular, and I believe those 3 videos are also in the How to Move Abroad playlist on this channel. But in particular, I have linked I did a video um, called Choosing Your Expat Destination, where I talk about, my process and what were some of the research sites I went to get various information, and the table I created so I could compare countries. I also included an interview I did with somebody who was country shopping over 50. I hope there's nobody watching this thinking, oh, moving abroad, that's for young folks. Or, like I'm in my 60s and it's too late for me to go. We don't believe that around here. And the third video I did is about picking the best country for you. And again, all 3 of those are linked in the description of this video, because one of the things I tell people who, meet with me, clients who are wanting to go abroad and they're trying to figure out where to start and what country might be right for them, you really have to identify, what are you looking for in this new life? What are your must-haves, nice to have? What are your deal breakers? I think you really have to hone in on that stuff as much as you can before you start looking. And so that video talks about that. Because really, where should I move? That's a question I see so often in the online spaces I'm in for folks who are looking to move abroad. And I feel a kind of way about folks asking that question, but not figuring out what it is they're looking for first. So we've covered where to start. We've covered like how do you decide where to move? And so let's talk about the main thing I want to talk about tonight is what to do if you choose the wrong country. You hate it. You've done all the things, you've watched all the YouTube videos, you've joined the Facebook groups, you got on the expat app, you ask questions, you get there, and you're like, this ain't it. What do? Well, what's first off, how dire is this situation? Is this a situation of you're just not feeling it and the vibes are off? Or is it a situation where it is unsafe? Because if you arrive in a new country and you find that your safety is at risk, immediately you need to get out of there. Whether that means flying back to the US, flying back to your home country, that's okay. I often hear people say that if they have to go back home, they feel like they failed. And honestly, I think that's some bullshit. Because it's not a failure in my eyes. It's you made a decision based on the information you had. Now that you've been there, you've got new information, and so maybe that new information is going to cause you to make a new choice. That is completely valid. There is no moral judgment on needing to go back, regroup, and try it again. So, first off, if the reason you hate it or the reason you feel like this is not the place for me is a safety issue, solve that problem first. That might mean having to go back home, stay with a friend, stay with a relative. That might just mean getting out of there to go someplace temporarily. Either way. Um, if that's not the situation, if it's not a safety issue, but you're not feeling it, the first question I would want you to ask yourself, and let me stop here and say, I'm speaking tonight to the folks that are someplace and they're already thinking, this ain't for me. But if you haven't moved yet and you're watching this video, use these questions, use what I'm talking about. Like, this is, put this in your back pocket, store this somewhere so that when you do make the move, if you find yourself in this situation, you know how to evaluate the situation and remedy the problem. Okay. So let's say you've moved to your new country and you don't like it. Let's dig into deeper into why you don't like it. Okay. Because there can be many reasons, and I think understanding the reasons why you don't like it there are going to help you when you revamp the situation and come up with a new plan. So, is your dislike of this place, is it about the place or is it about your expectations? I am an advocate. I tell this to everybody. Go into, whether you're moving abroad, whether you're traveling long term, go into it with zero or minimal expectations. Because more likely than not, you've never lived in this place. Your experience is with the place you used to live. And there is nothing to say that that experience is going to prepare you for this new place. So I'm always advocating for people to just kind of don't go into a country with expectations. Let that country, show itself to you. So my first question to you is, the reason that you don't like this country, is it because of something that's quote unquote wrong with that country? Or is it that you had expectations for what it was going to look like, what it was going to feel like, how it was going to sound, how it was going to smell, and it did not line up with those expectations? So that's the first thing I would say to ask yourself. And if you think it's your expectations, well, what were your expectations? What did you expect out of this place? And I'd even dig a little further and ask myself, why was that my expectation? I have lived in Mexico for 5 years. And people, I see it a lot. People move to Mexico City and then they end up not liking it. And when we dig into like what is it they don't like, because y'all know me, I go hard for Mexico City, but I'll be the first to admit it is not a place for everybody. And then we get into some of people's expectations of like they thought it would be less expensive. They thought that when people talked about the noise in Mexico, that Mexico is a noisy country, they kind of just blew that off. Or they expected that, like, oh, after a certain time, it would get quiet. Like their expectations might have been based off of, they saw some TikToks, they saw some reels on IG, and like if they've been consuming online content where people never talk about drawbacks or negative things, that might have set them up to have expectations that don't align with reality. Um, or if it wasn't your expectations, let's say you followed my advice and you went into this new country with zero expectations and you were like, new place, just reveal yourself to me. And you get there, and there are some cultural things that just don't feel right. Okay, what are those things? Did you know about them before, or were they a surprise? Um, I used to live in China, and there were some things I knew about before I got there. But one of the main reasons I no longer live in China is there's some cultural things that I just don't like. I'm not saying they're bad. I'm just saying I don't want to live a place where people do those things. And so that's a me problem. That's not a situation where I'm going to be trying to change the culture in China. I realize this is them. This is how they've been rocking for thousands of years. It's not the place for me. And so I moved somewhere else. So I think it's important to like dig into why you might not like a place. Is it about your expectations, or is it about fundamental features and aspects of that country that is just how things are there? And there are some things you cannot prepare for everything before you get there. Like, I'll give you an example. When I lived in China, like, I knew the cleaning standards weren't quite the same as they are in the US. What I did not expect was for the lady who mopped the floors in the common area of my building to use water out of the lake. You know how in like in a apartment area they have like trees and grass and like a lake, kind of like a decorative lake. I didn't expect her to use that water out of the lake to mop the floor. Like there was nothing that could have prepared me for that. So I don't want anybody beating themselves up because they couldn't anticipate these cultural aspects that they didn't care for. You know, you do the best you can with the information that's available to you, like I said before, and then if necessary, you make a new choice. Okay, so it's important to know whether it was your expectations or a cultural aspect. I would also add, when you're thinking about why you don't like a place, is it is it related to geography or the time of year? Like, particularly areas that have tourists, they may have a high season and a low season. And so if you move to a place and it's high season where there are lots of tourists and maybe prices are a little bit elevated, there's more people, there's more noise, that may impact your experience in that place. You know, it may be that, like when I moved to Honduras, although I never expected to stay in Honduras long term, I learned very quickly that I did not want to live in a place that had hills, because it felt like everywhere I walked, it was uphill both ways, and it was hot as hell outside. So, yeah, the geography, the weather of a place, you can't really do anything about that. But if what you are disliking about a place is related to something seasonal, like you move to Norway and there's this big chunk of the year where the sun hardly ever comes out, and you've got seasonal affective disorder or something like that, maybe that is not the right place for you, or maybe you need to reimagine your plan and you split your time so that you're away when the sun isn't shining. Or if it's a place that has lots of tourists, you can be someplace else during high season. Something to think about. Okay. Um, Now, uh, if you're finding that you aren't liking the place, I want you to think critically about how long have you been there? Have you been there 3 days? I'm not encouraging anybody to stick with something that they do not enjoy and they do not like. However, if you've only been there 2, 3 days, maybe less than a week, ask yourself if in that time that you've been there, have you experienced the place in the same way you would as you would live your life normally? Here's an example of what I mean. So let's say you move to a beach town or not necessarily a beach town, but let's say you move someplace and for the first 4 or 5 days, you have a hotel or Airbnb in the tourist zone, or you're kind of like doing touristy, vacationy things. That's a very different experience than when you live in a place. And so I am an advocate of you move there, immediately start moving about the city, the town, the way you would as part of your life. Do you need to go to the grocery store? Do you need to go find a place to do laundry? Do you need to go get a SIM card? Like, live your life the way that you would live it and then see how it feels. Because if you've been there a week or even a month or two, but you've not been doing the things, going the places that you would as part of your life, I don't know that you can really judge whether or not that place is a good fit for you. As some of you know, who've been watching my channel for a while, you know that I am looking for another country to get residency in. I'd like to hold residency in multiple countries. And so last spring, when I visited Lisbon, Portugal, I made a point that I was going to exist there during the weeks I was there in the way that I would envision living there so that I could really feel like, will this work for me or not? And yes, it was a scouting trip, but I think it's important to do the same thing, like not to put your regular life on hold when you get to a place because there's cool, fun tourist stuff to do. Um, that's what I think. It takes time in a place, living like a local, not a tourist, to get the real feel. It does. It does. So that's a question I would want you to think about if you are finding that you're not really feeling this new place that you moved to. Okay. Now, I will give a caveat on that because again, I don't want you to stay any place. Uh, I don't believe anybody should stick with something just because they spent a while making the decision. Be that a place, be that a job, be that a person. No. If you're like, I don't like it here, I've not been here very long. If the thought of staying another day, another week, another month fills you with dread, you need to go. I know what I said about, oh, you need to give it time, you need to try and live your regular life there. But if the thought of being there another second makes you feel, gives you the ick, you need to go. Okay. But I want you to interrogate, like, okay, why do I feel this way? It's important to do that so you don't end up in another place that you dislike as much as the first. Now, something else I want you to ask yourself, is it the whole country you hate? Is it the city that you hate? Or is it the specific neighborhood that you are staying in? Because those can be very different. You know, where, like I said, I've been living in Mexico City for 5 years. And over the 5 years, I have spent time in different neighborhoods. And I'm thinking of one that I stayed in that if it had been me moving here and that had been the first place I lived, I'd have been like, no, this is not the place for me. So before you go through all that it takes to pack up and move somewhere else, ask yourself the issues that you have with this place, are they, do you feel like they would be issues in the entire country? Or maybe you just switch up neighborhoods, or maybe you just haven't picked the right city for you. I don't know if any of you subscribe to Tracy Collins's YouTube channel. She and her wife did multiple multi-city scouting trip. They had a whole like rubric set up to rank the different places, and they decided to move to Mexico City, and they got here and discovered in about a month or two this was not the place for them. And then they moved to San Miguel de Allende, and it was, I was gonna say love at first sight, like they fell head over heels for that place. So the things that they did not like were Mexico City specific, and they were able to move to another city and keep on living the dream. So that's something to consider if you find that you're not happy where you are. Now, it is my advice to everybody to make that list of these are the things I have to have in my new home. These are the things I'd like to have. These are the absolute deal breakers, things that I don't want anything, I can't have this at all. Like for me, a deal breaker, I can't move to a city that has fewer than 3 metro lines, because that's not going to be a city that's big enough for somebody like me. Like that is a deal breaker. It's important to have that list before you go. Now that you've gone to this place and you are unhappy with it, go back to that list that you made. Are your priorities the same as they were? Or did living in this place for however short of a time help you figure out some things about yourself and about what you want in your new home? Okay. So that's one. Compare, like, how would you rewrite that list? I had my whole table of things I wanted. I moved to Honduras. I don't think Honduras checked any of the boxes on that list, but from living in Honduras for a year, there were some things that like I said, uphill both ways. And so I decided, I got really good clarity on, I want to live in a place that's flat, a place that has mild weather, a place that has mass transit, and a place that has a real international airport with more than 4 gates and 6 flights a day. So when you look at your original list of wants and needs, how would you rewrite that list? Go ahead and update it, because you'll need to use that when you're choosing your next destination. And I'd also ask myself, like, this destination that you chose that you didn't really like, was it based on your priorities, or was it something else? Did you get sort of talked out of a place that you would have chosen because so many of the ladies in Exodus Summit were moving to place X, Y, and Z? Or I heard that the cost of living in this place is super, super low, so I moved there instead, but it doesn't really align with the priorities that I said I had. I'd also ask myself, from my original list, what made this place that I did not like seem like a good choice? Why are you asking yourself these questions? Again, so that you have more clarity when it comes to choosing your next place. Layla, frequent power outages, unclean water, no air conditioning in a home are a deal breaker for me. Um, that's something I had to deal with in when I lived in Honduras. I knew going into it that you couldn't drink the water. What I did not know was hot water, not a thing. That's why I ended up in a place that had a suicide shower. It's a because the apartment did not have a hot water heater. But to have hot water in the shower, there are shower heads that they run electricity to heat the water right before it touches you. I did not know about that. We actually had frequent power outages. Now, they were often communicated like through the newspaper or on the internet ahead of time. But yeah, like I learned not to keep a full freezer, which went against, I was a mom. I raised three kids. You learn to always keep like extra stuff in the freezer just in case. And I had to break myself for that because you lose so much food because of the frequent power outages and no AC. Only one room in my apartment had air conditioning, and we lived in the tropics. So yeah, um, I air conditioning hasn't been a deal breaker for me because I wanted to live in a place that didn't get super hot. Now, of course, climate change is here, and now my my Mexico City used to have super mild weather, and that is not the case anymore. And I don't know if that's going to end up making me have to leave. But yeah, I feel you on those deal breakers. And something else I did not know. I didn't know, every place don't have addresses, which can be interesting when you're trying to give someone directions or you need to go someplace or you want to order, you know, um, takeout. We would order pizzas when I lived in Honduras, and my address, was next to the school brown gate, and the pizza guy would just be in the street and then would have to call and I'd have to come down there, come down to be like, hey, it's me. It's a while wait. Like, yeah, I'd rather not. So, you experience, like Pamela says right here, experience is a good teacher. Because sometimes you don't know what you don't know. Okay. Okay. And so I've moved to a different state here in the US, and now I have three additional criteria to add to my list when I blacks it. Exactly. So nobody should feel bad again about you got to this place because again, you made the decision to move there based off of I hope that's how you made the decision to move there based off of information you had. I hope you did not choose a destination just because other people were going there, because that's a recipe for it to not be a good fit for you. But assuming that you did your research to the best of your ability, you made a choice based on that information, and now you have new information. So you get to make more choices. Okay. And so after you've done all of that, it's time to make a new plan, create a new timeline, take what you have learned about yourself, about the kind of place that you want to live, and make some tweaks and choose a new destination. Now, whoops. This is one of the reasons, as Jess has pointed out, that I'm always telling y'all you need oh shit money because things happen, things come up that you don't expect. And so you've said goodbye to your life in the US, you've downsized your life, you've packed up, you've gone to this place, you've tried to live there and it doesn't work. And now you need to leave. I don't want anybody to be in a situation where they have to stay in a place because they don't have the money or the means to go somewhere else. That's why we have oh shit money. That is exactly why. Hopefully that is cash in a high yield savings account, or because sometimes it takes a while to build up cash. Sometimes we gotta make our move before we're fully flushed with cash. Or you've got a credit card that you've set aside with a sizable limit to take on emergencies in case you need to. But this is why I'm always talking about, you got to have that oh shit money. Okay. And this is also one of those things, like, I always advocate for people to move abroad with as little as possible. As y'all know, I am a minimalist. My friend Rashida Dow, who also has a YouTube channel, is a maximalist, who I helped her clean out her storage unit. And we brought back a fraction of the things she owned to Mexico. But when you're making this move internationally and you pack up an entire household and you bring that stuff with you, whether you choose to do that, I'm not going to tell you that that's a good idea or a bad idea, but it does maybe hinder your mobility if it turns out that the destination you've chosen doesn't really align with you and that it's not a good fit. Packing up, like when I left Honduras, when I moved to Honduras, my employer shipped 2 boxes, 200 pounds of stuff for me. And then I didn't think about what happens when you leave. Will they pay to ship that stuff? I didn't think about that. So I brought things, one, because I didn't know what would be available in Honduras. I brought a lot of things that did not end up going with me when I made my next move. One, because I didn't want to pay to ship them. Two, a lot of my stuff got damaged in shipping. And three, I wanted to be more mobile. I wanted, because when I first moved to Mexico, I didn't know if I was going to like it. And so having 3 suitcases and my dog, if I didn't like it someplace, I could move very quickly. Like when I moved to Kuwait and did not like it at all. When I left, it was very easy for me to leave because, again, I had 3 suitcases worth of stuff. So that's something to consider. There are a lot of reasons that you might not want to move your entire life as you have it in the US with you to another country. Cost is definitely a consideration. Um, if you are moving from the US to Europe, European apartments are so much smaller. Living spaces are so much smaller than what we're used to in the US. Your appliances, well, your furniture is probably going to be too big. Your appliances are not the proper voltage, and then there is the cost associated with it. And also, you are creating a new life. Less of the old, more of the new can only be a good thing, I think. So, uh, the beautiful life of Trista. I'm free. Sold my house, only have a small storage currently, about to downsize that. Again, it gives you a lot of flexibility and mobility. Um, and then when you really know that you want to be a place, you can, if you want to have lots of stuff, you can have more of that stuff. All right. Thank y'all for popping in. This is not going to be a super long live, unless y'all have questions about, if there's anybody here that's finding themselves in a situation where they don't like the country that they've chosen. Pop in, drop your question in the chat. Um, I'm trying to think if I always forget to like make announcements and things like that. I do have a couple of retreat announcements. We had a spot open up on the September retreat in Oaxaca, Mexico. So if you are like, oh my gosh, I thought I missed out on going to Oaxaca with Reclaim the Retreat. You can go to the website, get the information, and snag that spot. We still have the other announcement, we still have a few spots for the December retreat, which will be in El Salvador. Um, want to make sure I told y'all that. Um, how long of a scouting trip and how many would you advise to get a good feeling if a place is truly for you? That is an excellent question, but I don't know that I have the answer to you for you. Honestly, I don't necessarily believe a scouting trip is a must. Um, I've never had one to any country I've ever lived in. But I know some people are like, girl, I'm not going to be out here bad like that, like you. I would say a couple of weeks. Like you can't do I don't think you can truly do a scouting trip in a weekend. I don't I don't think you have enough different things going on in a weekend to do that. I'd say maybe ideally 3 weeks if you could. I think it could be managed in a week if you used your time properly. I think the more important part is however much time you have to spend in some place to use that time in the way you would if you lived there. That means foregoing the tourist activities and and forego the hotel, stay in a neighborhood. I would even suggest not getting an Airbnb where you're there by yourself. I might get an Airbnb where it's somebody who's renting out a room in their place because then you've got access to a local so you can ask some questions like where do I go to get laundry, how do you get mail, stuff like that. So I think that's very much and how I would focus that time. So I think that's more important than how much time, as much time as you can, but however much time you have to spend, I would focus it on being there and experiencing the place the way you would living there. If you're not going to have a car, don't rent a car. Get around the city the way you would if you lived there. I think that's more important. Um, and do the things that you, not just like, oh, I need to go to the grocery store, I need to do laundry, I need to mail some stuff. Also, what are the things that you do for fun? Can you do those in this place? Try doing them um, and see how that works. And I think that will give you more information so that you can, make a choice about this is right for me or not. Um, You know what they always say, no matter where you go, there you are. People move some places and they are unhappy in the place, but they move to the place and they're unhappy with the place, and it's not really the place that's the problem. It's whatever this issue is that they have not dug into, this personal thing that they haven't fixed, because no matter where you go, there you are. So, yeah, you definitely want, one of the things that sometimes concerns me in this space online where people are talking about moving abroad, there are a lot of people who are very focused on what they are leaving behind, what they I don't like to say what they are running from, but it's very much about, I don't want this and this and this in this place. And not so much, I want to be in this place because I like this about it. And so I think it is, I am often concerned that a lot of people are not moving to a place because it has things that they want. It's more about, I got to get away from this place that I used to live. So that's a concern. That's a concern. All right. The opening in Oaxaca is for a space in a double occupancy room. So if you know somebody, Natasha, that you want a roommate with, we've got a space because we haven't assigned rooms yet. So all right, y'all. That's all I got for tonight. Thank you for joining me. If there is somebody you know who you think would find this video helpful, please send it to them. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you enjoy the content, but you haven't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe to the channel, and I will see y'all later. Bye, guys.